All
Cool.
right, so
Yeah.
I'll just jump in and start, and then we'll hand it over to you. So my name is Cami Cannikins, and I'm from Medicine Hat, Alberta. And my job is an instructional coach in a school district in the south. And we are, both Damien and I are people who do contract work for Cobblestone Collective. And we often do lots of Microsoft stuff. In fact, Damien will find out is the Microsoft expert. So we're in good hands today with him. And my job today is going to be over in the chat. I'll be answering your questions. So if you have questions, you just put them in the chat. I'll answer them, or I'll get Damien to stop and do a reshow or a repeat or something like that. And so that is my job for the day. And Damien, we're just going to hand it over to you, and you can just go.
Yeah, sounds awesome. Thanks for the intro. So super excited to have everybody here. As Cami was mentioning a little bit earlier, this feature that we're going to be sharing today is so brand new that we had to delay when we were going to actually start presenting this because it wasn't rolled out yet to all the demo tenants, or just in general all the tenants out there. And B, again, so new that I think we're ahead of even the Microsoft marketing in this case. So, they're just starting to ramp up, making sure it's still technically in a preview phase, but it works pretty phenomenally. And we'll show you all about it and how you can leverage it for your own classroom and or training. So with that being said, we're talking about reading progress. And if you'd like to follow along with us, then the link on the page, or sorry, on the screen right now, that is to the deck that we'll be showcasing partially today. It's got all the steps. It's got all the the different things that you can do with it. There might be a couple outdated things just because it's, again, such a new product. New things are coming out by the week. So at the time that it was created, actually at the time that I created it, and then we did our first session, which was only a total of 2 days, a couple new buttons already appeared. So if it looks a little bit out there, we're going to try to update it as frequently as we can. But for the meantime, it will still provide you with the best gist and understanding of what we will go through today.
So Damien,
yeah.
I was going to say, it'll be interesting to see if there's any new buttons today that weren't here last week when we did this.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, just challenge me to explore that when we're live. But yeah, so super excited for that. And as a brief reminder, this workshop is recorded. So if you'd like to ever return back to a specific feature, or you missed something, the slide deck isn't exactly covering it, you can always resort back to this recording as well, and we will be here right for you exactly where we left off. And as Cami mentioned, just if you have any questions, if you want us to go over something or anything like that, let Cami know, and Cami will be able to jump in and let me know, and we can work for you. So, with that said, my name is Damien. I am not from out west. I'm in central Ontario, so in Mississauga, right beside Toronto, here on Treaty 13A. And very similarly, I do a lot of contract work, for Cobblestone and the likes, and I really enjoy and am passionate about educating educators and students on what is already available to them, but what they might not actually yet know, right? How to maximize all the tools at your disposal, particularly more on the Microsoft side here. So I'm very excited to share with you some of that knowledge. With that being said, I think before we head on, I would like to do just a land acknowledgement. I want to recognize those that came before us, and that I am acknowledging I'm settled on this land. There were already those that came, and I'm very fortunate and happy that I'm able to present from the lands of the Mississauga of the Credit people. And a little fact that I like to try to connect is that some parts of the land of the Mississauga of the Credit were actually in a specific territory that was called the Dish with One Spoon. And that was basically I guess like a pact that bound people and bound the different peoples to share that territory and ultimately to protect the land, right? And the dish was representing the land itself, while the spoon was representing the people that were mutually cooperating and living on that land. And again, the key word was mutual and peaceful, right? So they didn't believe in violence to take over different parts. And so I really like that bit of history and fact, because I think it can be very applicable to modern struggles or challenges that we are facing today. For one example, global climate change. So I think it is a very important piece and lessons that we can apply. And if you'd like to learn more about the lands that you are on today, or just in general, I highly recommend to go to native-land.ca. It's a phenomenal website. It'll show you all the treaties, all the different lands, and then you can hopefully learn a little bit from there as well. So big thank you to Cobblestone Collective for hosting this session today. Cami and I were super excited to be able to share reading progress with you. We brought it up; it's super new, and I'm very fortunate to be advocating and speaking to some of these early adopters of the tool. So thank you to Cobblestone for helping us provide that, and also thank you to Microsoft Education Canada for supporting this session as well. We couldn't be able to do it without them. So I'm very fortunate that we have that chance to be here for you today. And this is kind of our agenda, very brief. We will just do a brief review of Teams, right? If we're getting back into the groove after summer, or just we might not be as familiar with it, there are a couple different changes I want to point out. And then we're gonna go over creating an assignment, because assignments is where the beauty of reading progress is found in. And then we'll dive into that. We'll explore all of that together. And lastly, this whole session, you will be able to get certified. We'll be able to give you a code for a badge that you can redeem, and then you can use that, create an account, share that out, and document the extra PD and upskilling that you are doing today. So we're more than happy to give out that code. So stay tuned to the very end. We'll give that out. I'll try to dedicate some time to showcase how you can actually go ahead and implement that. And I think with that being said, let's just dive right in. So actually, before I switch the screen, I do want to point out that I will be doing everything in the web version of Teams. So if you'd like to follow along with us, then you can open up your own browser, your own tab, and do exactly that, follow along. This feature is available also in desktop version of Teams. There is one limitation with mobile, but we'll address that. It's just when sharing it out to students. But the reason I'm doing it in the web version is just because it is the most universal version of Office and Teams out there. You can use it on Chromebooks, on Apple devices, tablets, Windows PC, all the likes. So here we are in our portal, and I know I just jumped in here. So essentially, to get here, if you're not too familiar with some of the shortcuts, then what we're able to do is go to portal.office.com. So if I just went to a new tab, portal, I keep .office, .com, and I click enter, it's going to sign me in automatically just because I'm already signed in. With that being said, if that doesn't happen for you, all you need to do is type in your your school email ultimately, and then it'll take you to the login page for your school board. So I prefer the portal.office.com. It takes us directly there as opposed to office.com. It's like an extra step or two, but you will ultimately end up in the same place. So maybe I'll give a couple seconds for some individuals to log in. In the meantime, I will just visualize what's happening here. On the left-hand panel, I have all of the Microsoft apps that are currently available to us, and we can pin different things as we like. Some of us might not have this layout where we have the apps on the side and kind of like a quick access menu. You might have the apps already displayed right in the middle of your screen, so there's that to be mindful for. And if you don't see either of them, try checking out the waffle in the top left corner, and then you should be able to see your apps here. If you don't see any apps at all, that's definitely an IT issue, and you're going to have to raise that up. But that's pretty infrequent. If you're already teaching classes, then you should be okay. So with that being said, I think we can navigate over to Teams, right? Because that's where the reading progress is found, and that's where we're going to be able to dive right into this phenomenal tool. And my browser is nice and quick, thankfully, so we'll be able to just jump right in. Let me know, or let Cami know, if the light mode is okay. If you prefer a dark mode, which would look like this, I can work with this as well. I prefer to work with it, but I know presentation-wise, it might not be suitable for everybody or a little bit difficult to see. So let me know. I can easily change that and hopefully make sure that everything is nice and legible. So as promised, we're just going to do a very brief overview of Teams in case we're not too familiar with it. So we have our landing page. Generally, we land with all of our teams in this format, in like a grid-like format, which is a very EDU specific feature. And so we can choose which team we're jumping into or which class is more appropriate, I guess. We can choose which class we want to dive into. On the left-hand side over here, we have our panel, very similar actually to our portal over here. So it's all very uniform. Our activity at the top, we have our chats for one-on-ones, whether it's with peers or students. Teams is where the landing page we are in now for our classes. We have a general assignments tab, so we'll be able to navigate a little bit in between that as well. And then your calendar if you are booking things out, such as your classes or calls or things like that. And then we have a files section, but right now, it's not too integrated with reading progress. It's a raised issue, and we'll tackle that as we get there. So we're going to spend the majority of our time inside of this accessibility studies classroom. So I'm going to click on that, and we have a bit of some cool stuff happening here. I have to check this out because I'm not getting any ellipsis when I hover over this, so that's very interesting. But regardless, the change I want to point out when we are now inside of a class is that this section, this top right over here, where we see class notebook, assignments, grades, insights, these used to be actually pinned to the top in the general channel. So this general channel used to be on top, and then these 4 tabs were kind of automatically associated in the tabs. But we got a lot of feedback that it was a little bit too messy, too clunky. It got very confusing. So the big fundamental change essentially is that these 4 are their own sections, very easily accessible and potentially navigated. And then we have our channels at the bottom separated by this line. So that's a bit of a brief change. If you haven't noticed that this year, or maybe if an update will get pushed out, this is the newer version of Teams. So as promised, we have our overview, we have kind of a bit of an intro, and I think we can dive into assignments. So let's run through what it looks like to create an assignment and what that generally looks like in a classroom. So inside accessibility studies, I've got two different things created here, 2 different assignments. One is reading assignment number 2, the Osprey, and I have 1 out of 5 turned in. We're going to work in that, but we're also going to create a 3rd one after Let's Play Lacrosse. But I can see Let's Play Lacrosse. I can click into an assignment and see who turned it in, who didn't, if I marked anything like that. So very quick navigational for within accessibility studies. If you're teaching multiple classes, you can go to the assignments tab on the left and see all of the assignments across your different classes. So this is where you can kind of get a bigger overview and see all the different things happening there. Whereas if I return back to my individual class, I actually only have 2 out of those. I think it was 6 in that list. So let's create a brand new assignment, and we'll work together on that. You can follow along in that PowerPoint deck that we created for you. And if not, then just follow along with us. I'll try to keep it a little bit slower just so there's some time for you to be able to navigate and manage with that as well.
Damien, I just thought, sorry, I thought we could maybe just jump in and just have everyone let us know whether or not you have access to create a class in Teams, because I know in my district, I can't actually create a class. I can join one. So if you can't, then you'll want to just watch today. You'll get the PowerPoint where you have all the buttons, but okay, good. Sydney can. Excellent to know. So it is not fully uncommon that school divisions turn off the ability to create classes. So if you aren't getting a create button, that does happen. So, but it looks like we're good. So you just keep going, Damien.
No, that's a great call out for anybody that reads the recording. You're not alone if that is the case in your school board. It's just the way that some decisions get made. So great call out, Candy. That's awesome. All right. So with that being said, let's dive right in, and we're going to create a brand new assignment. So under the create button, 3 things kind of come up. I can choose from an existing template. So if I release a similar template for all my classes or year after year, I can just go ahead and save time on creating something from scratch. I can release a quiz right from here, but we're going to scroll up and we're going to select assignment. Okay, and now that we're here, I can put in a title, so I can, let's just say, I'm doing school myself right now as well. So what are we learning about? Assistive devices. Assistive. And so we can add a category if we so chose. So I don't have any created categories right now, but I can do that. So maybe I want to do special ed. And then I can put my instructions here. So I can type a paragraph or a note of certain instructions. I can create a brand new document, right? So whether that's contained in a Word, in an Excel, a PowerPoint, or a class notebook, so within OneNote, I can create specific instructions elsewhere externally and then just attach them via that new button here if I don't have anything already created. If I do have something already created, I can click that attach button, and there are, the upload from device. I can select from my OneDrive, again from class notebook, specific links, and a little preview. This is where your reading progress should be. So if you don't see reading progress, that means that it wasn't pushed out or the update. But at this point, there's already a couple weeks now that it should be out there. So if you see this, that's great. You have it. Okay. If you don't, then that's something that we can address through your individual school board. So with that being said, we can go ahead. We can add those instructions as we so chose. And I don't think I have anything I want to add in there for now, and that's okay. I can then add some points as a rubric. So I'm able to, if I wanted to have a certain mark or grade it, I can go ahead and put that immediately, or I can actually just go to the add rubric. And once I go within add rubric, I can create one from scratch, or I can upload one if it's not already uploaded. And what's cool is if you've already used a certain rubric in your classes, the most recently used rubrics will be displayed here. So I have one for reading progress, and then we'll click on that in a second, but I'm going to click add rubric. And just as a brief reminder, if it's possible to stay on mute just to ensure that we are getting the best experience for any people watching the recording, that would be phenomenal. Thank you. So if I'm creating a brand new rubric from here, I can just simply enter the title of what that rubric will be called, a description, and then be able to add some criteria the way that I would like to grade. And I can easily click either these plus signs at the bottom or the top in order to extend that criteria. And at the top right, I'm able to assign points as well. So how many points each category will look like. I'm going to cancel. Yes, that's okay. We can go ahead and lose that rubric.
And so, Damien, I'd like to just add there too that you do not need it. Adding a rubric is just one of those great things you can do in assignments and teams. You do not have to use a rubric for using reading fluency. We just are showing you how to add a rubric because it is a really nice feature that you can add in addition. So you don't have to add a rubric for, I called it reading fluency, for reading progress, but it is certainly something that's available. So an option.
Yeah, absolutely. And on that note, we are going to showcase and display everything you can do, right? So we want to make sure that everything is covered, and then within that parameter, you can make that decision as well. So cool. I can select my my rubric. So I got my reading progress rubric here, and I'm going to click next, and I still have a chance to be able to edit it. So I have my rubric already kind of created here. I can redistribute the weights if I so chose. I can add an extra bit or change, edit anything up if I wanted to last minute, alter that. If not, and I'm content, I'm just going to click attach. And now I can see, out of points, that's 100. So maybe we'll do, I think it was 20. And now reading progress rubric is attached over here. I can always exit if I want, and my points. Moving down, I want to confirm where I'm assigning this assessment to, right? So if I'm creating it within a team, so accessibility studies in this case, then it is assigning to accessibility studies. or I can also choose a different class that I'm part of as well. And I have those privileges or that ownership. So I'm able to do that. And then I can also over here have a feature where I can choose actually to who I'm distributing to. So I can distribute to all students if this is a general class assignment. I can give it to individual students, maybe as part of like an extra learning or request by parents, or we just want to assist our students with developing their skills a little bit more. Or even better, if we have groups of students and we want to give maybe a different passage to different groups, that we can do that as well within this parameter.
So Damien, that's just such a wonderful part about teams in general, but also the reading progress piece that we're looking at today is you can assign, we know that often we have different reading groups, different levels, and so you can easily assign different passages or parts of passages to different groups. And so this is where you would do that to do that differentiation. So it's just another one of those really powerful features that we can have that helps us meet all learners where they're at. So that's super important part for us as reading teachers.
Yeah, great call out. And so moving down, we can assign our due date very simply. So if I wanted to push it out to October 8th, that's when it's due. We can assign our time as well if we wanted to choose anywhere. Maybe let's keep it within school hours and do it right at 4:30 p.m. And lastly, what we want to cover is we can also add this assignment right into the calendars of ourselves and students. So if there is maybe like a reminder, tendency, some of our students tend to forget a lot, or they would like to have things in a kind of meticulous manner or placed already, then we can already assign that. So I can select this, I can assign it to all the student calendars, I can do it to just the students and myself, and then I can also do it to everybody that's part of the team. So if I had, the principal, if I had anybody else part of that team, I can also include the team owners as well. So that's a really neat feature as well. I've personally just been in like a recent time management fundamental overhaul using planners and calendars and things like that. So I find that really cool and functional. And then once we are content, we would hit assign. But now that we've walked through creating the actual, like a general assignment, we are going to add the reading progress piece. Okay, so if we recall from when we went earlier to the instructions area and to the attach, I'm going to click attach, and moving down, we have our reading progress. So I'm going to click on reading progress. It'll kind of take us through a different narrative or like a side quest almost to this main quest, and then we'll come back right to this page before we can assign it. So we're going to click on reading progress, and we will automatically bring up this page. Now, I mentioned earlier, this is such a preview and new feature that new things are added all the time. So if you're following along in the deck that we shared, you will notice that the picture actually only has upload Word or PDF. So within 2 days of myself and Cami working on the PowerPoint and presenting, they added a browse sample library, which is super cool, and we'll walk through both of them. But if you already have a reading piece that's saved or that you tend to use year after year or semester after semester, then you can just upload right from here. It'll take you to your documents, and you can choose, in this case, any Word or PDF. So I'm going to select this PDF. I'm going to open it. And the reason why I just want to showcase this part is because I'm actually able to edit the piece that I have. So despite it being as a PDF or saved as a Word document that on its own, it can't be edited, when I upload it, I can still go ahead and change some things. So in this edit function, maybe I'm going to get rid of this title in this passage since the title is up here, right? It's a little redundant to have. Maybe, this text is kind of long and I wanted to eliminate a part of the sentence. So I can go ahead and customize that depending on what the class needs or how I wanted to change it.
And Damien, I'd like to just jump in there because you mentioned shrinking the text, and that's one thing we'll see. And one thing that I found when I was using it for the first times is I had assigned a passage that was quite long, and I said, well, I'll just tell them to read the first 2 paragraphs. But what happens is it marks the first two, and then basically they get errors for the rest. And so this feature where you can go in and you can shrink a text that you've always had access to is really great, because you can make it fit just the amount of time that you want your students to read for. And so if nothing else, that ability to edit makes it so that you can just find a short text and don't need to have them submit such a long reading. So that is super helpful, if nothing else, than just the shortening feature.
Yeah, and that's a great tip, one that you caught and I love. And with that tool, you can maybe even do like a part 1 or part 2 as well, if we are aiming to complete the full passage. So some great kind of strategies that you can implement. We're going to talk about the reading level, all this stuff in the next demo. So when we're going to the sample library, actually, I think that's really it for this part. So we're able to edit when we upload our own piece of document. One key thing is if we are requiring video, right? So if we want to assess our students' body language or the way that they might fidget or just read a body of text, please note that right now, reading progress, if the student is using a mobile device, it does not support video. So if we're doing a required video, then we want to be able to showcase that and share that very briefly. Okay, so I would just check it off if we want to ensure that. On top of that, yeah, I think that's it for here. We're going to navigate back. I'm going to choose a new passage. And we're going to browse the sample library. I love the sample library. There's some great stuff in here. And that's because if you are like me and scouring the internet for a sample passage or anything to share out with your students, it could get a little tricky and you can fall down that rabbit hole of just finding something to be able to share. And so it's so great because we have this now library of readings, a variety of different levels. And I think we can select or filter by specific grade levels all the way to like a secondary level. We can filter by each kind of sub count over here as well. So the actual title, by an alphabetical order, maybe the genre of it. So if we're focusing on a fiction or nonfiction elements, the lexile level, which Cami, I think you can jump in and explain a little bit more because you're better at that. And then lastly, through word count as well, and through our little tip of using smaller words, if that's your intention.
Yeah, and so one of the things, again, I think Sydney mentioned this when she came in, is she was just, had heard about reading progress and was wanting to just kind of get her feet wet with it. When like Damien, this didn't exist when we first started using it. And so then, you had to try to find the piece in the right format and all that. So this sample library, if you want to try it out and play with it before you assign it to your students, the sample library is golden. And then it does have that lexile level as well. And so lots of you as reading teachers, you'll know that some of your books even will have like a lexile level on the back cover, or a lot of our reading tests and reading programs will offer a lexile level. And so you can kind of have an example of what grade level. There's lots of grade level lexile equivalency charts. And so you can use those to help you find a passage that would be the level that you're looking for. So this sample library, I was so excited when I saw this. And then I wasn't expecting it to come for weeks, and here it is already. So excellent.
Yeah, I think that was the key too. They put out there, right, that they said, oh, it's on the way. And when companies shouldn't say it's on the way, we can expect a pretty long wait time. So it came very as a nice surprise that how quick it is. And lastly, as we're navigating these different reading passages, we can even preview each passage as well. So if I'm looking at A Tornado is Coming, I can preview that, see what it looks like, decide if that's what I want. If I don't like that, I can go back. Maybe something a little bit more challenging. Chris crosses the street. We can go ahead and select that. So let's go ahead and do All About Trumpets. Why not? And I'm going to select this.
And one of the things that,
yeah.
Oh, I was just going to mention, and maybe you were going to mention this already, and I'm just stepping on you, Damien, but we can't edit. You'll notice on Damien's screen right there at the top where we edited our own personal PDF or Word document, there is no edit function in the sample libraries. So the sample library is great, but you can't do the editing like you could in your own piece. So that's that part.
Yeah, exactly. Great call out. And so now, we can't edit. We already have these reading levels assigned. So everything that we saw, it already pre-filled this, right? If we were uploading our own passage or something that we've used for months, for years, then we would just insert it ourselves. So, like reading level J, or we can change from fiction to nonfiction. We can also decide how many attempts that we want our students to have. So if this is, the first time, they're a little bit nervous and maybe want a little bit of practice, it is a different environment to read, to a computer and submit that as it is maybe in person, then we can select those amounts of attempts, right? And we'll be able to see that as well. As an educator, we'll be able to see how many attempts the student took in order to finally submit their preferred one. We can also right here select a pronunciation sensitivity. So always it's set as a default. We can navigate to a less or more sensitive. And we'll talk about that a little bit more once we actually go to marking it. But I'm going to check off require video since that's not necessary. But right before we go and click next, we can pretend to be the student and actually ensure what their perspective will be like. So under the student view right here, I can click that. Allow my microphone in this case. I'm not going to do camera because it will interfere with the team's meeting right now. But I'm able to go ahead and pretend that I'm the student that will be filling this out. So I will click start. It'll give me a countdown. And I can start reading. So have you ever heard of a trumpet make a sound? Trumpets are made out of brass. And I can go ahead and try to mimic what I'm going to get wrong or right. What we might notice, though, is that if we're familiar with some accessibility features found within Microsoft, this is kind of a bare bones immersive reader, right? So we might see that similarity between the extra spacing, just the fact that there is everything is blocked out, right? I can't see anything else. I could if I wanted to through this minimize feature, but by default, it will complete our entire screen. And I have these text preferences at the top. So I can select, the text size if I wanted to make it a little bit potentially more legible for myself. I can increase the spacing between each letter and each word and sentence. I also can change the font. So depending on which grade level that we're educating, right? A younger grade level might prefer Comic Sans just because it resembles handwriting a little bit more. So it's a more fluid or natural progression from handwriting to reading. So it really just depends on our grade level and on the student's preference as well. And lastly, just to make it a little bit easier, we can change the theme of the page as well. So the background of the actual text, if I prefer a black kind of contrast, my eyes take a breath of fresh air when they see that. But some of our students might fixate or require certain aspects of colors as well, right? So we have that range that we're able to select over here.
So if you have, for example, students with Irlen syndrome where they need a specific color of paper, there are lots of options there. You can't have a specific hex color, like how sometimes you can put a hex color and get that exact specific. You are limited to the buttons that are on the screen, but there's lots of different, if your student needs yellow, they can have yellow. There's some different hues there. So most of the most popular kind of Irlen paper colors are provided there. So, and remember, this is student's view, so the student can set all of these things to make it comfortable for them to read before they begin.
Yeah, and on that note, even if they forgot to change something and they started reading, if we look at the top here, it's paused. So we're not detracting from the student the amount of time it takes them to read the passage if they're in the middle of changing their preferences. So they're not docked any points or anything like that, which is super cool. So once I eliminated it, it's back to recording. And once I'm done, I click all done. I can review this. And when I can't use the recording because I'm not actually submitting anything. I'm just in a mock kind of view. But I can try again if I'm not comfortable or just re-listen to it. And if I had video, it would show me my video right over here as well. So that's kind of the student view, right? Just to give you an example of what it would look like from our student perspective. So we're going to exit that. I think everything else looks good. Let's click next. And what it should do, I believe, yeah, it will attach the passage underneath instructions, right, to the assignment that we already created. So we already ran through this assignment and we created it, and all we had to do was go back, choose the reading progress, or if you want to go in order, you can do that as well. All right, I think we're ready to go. We're going to click assign, and boom. Just like that, we have it all. Yep.
As Damien goes on to the next section, we're going to look at the from the student view. But one of the things that you might want to, if you're taking any kind of notes today, something I would really suggest is that you just put a little asterisk and say, reading progress is found under attach, because that is a common issue that it's not super intuitive, that reading progress doesn't jump out at you. So if you're wanting to come back later, I know when I came back the first and second time, it's like, where is that again? So it's just under the attach is where you find reading progress. So it's kind of hidden. So you might want to just make an extra note of that for yourself.
Yeah, great call out. Absolutely. All right, so we submitted it. In just a moment, it will populate with how many people turned in and all that kind of stuff. But we're not going to worry about the assignment that we just created now. That's okay. I'm going to go back to my reading assignment number 2. And we're just going to work off a student who has completed their work and submitted it. Now, you can see that I had returned for revision, and the student has, in this case, Cami, completely unrelated from our Cami, has resubmitted it again. Right, so there is that option. We'll discuss that when we get through. So I'm going to, under the status, click on turned in again. But if it doesn't say turn in again, if it says not turned in, I can just click on that. So all of these are links to navigate us to that student specific assignment. So I'm going to click on turned in again, and we will see or observe the passage that Cami read. So this is that pronunciation sensitivity that we mentioned earlier. So by default, it was turned on. It is in a preview mode, and I'll tell you what that means in just a second, but I can always turn that off. So I can always just, now we see technically Cami is 100% correct, right? Because there's no markings on it, and we're manually going to listen and mark each word. But what auto detect really does nicely is that it almost anticipates you for what is upcoming, and you can still work with the auto detect, and I'll show you what that means. So, I can change that from medium, light, heavy, and I can click this play at the top left. I can, change the volume here if I wanted it louder or not as loud. But I'm going to click play, and we're going to listen to our student here.
The osprey is not as large as the eagle, but he has a hawked bill.
Okay, so Cami, let me know if we heard that. If not, then I'll just reshare, and yep, perfect. Okay, so as we were listening to the student, we noticed, 2 things. Mispronounced eagle, right? The auto detect didn't pick that up, and that's okay. So what I can actually do is I can click on this word and select it as mispronunciation. And now it changes the accuracy rate and, just the things that we corrected. And I believe if we went back and listened to it, I'm going to move back to the beginning.
The osprey is not as large as the eagle, but he has a hawked bill and sharp.
Okay, so we have this one that was also a mispronunciation. So I'm going to click that and select it, and it automatically updates. So again, notice that the auto detect helped us out, but it didn't get everything yet. So it's nice to do kind of a final comb over to make sure that everything is good. And let's just hear what exactly it picked up on the omission and insertion. So let's continue playing.
Claws like the eagle. The osprey is often found sitting in a tree on a pond, lake, or river.
So that looks pretty good. We inserted on instead of and then we didn't mention over and just went over to at. So that picked up pretty well, and we can make sure, or we can just confidently say that's good. Now with pronunciation sensitivity, it says preview, right? So that means that we are continuously working on it. But what's good and important to note is that it is run by artificial intelligence, or AI, as a lot of Microsoft technology is. And what that means specifically is the more it gets used, the more accurate it will be. So this was the first ever assignment that Cami submitted. So if I actually change it to high, I'll notice nothing actually really changed, right? If I went to low, same thing. And that's because, again, it was the first time that Cami submitted it. So what we're trying to ensure here is that we are taking into consideration accents and dialects, right? Because maybe they are saying the word correctly. It's just it's just a different way of saying it. So because, in this case, eagle, what was mispronounced, but it could have been the natural way that was spoken. That's why I didn't quite pick that up. So as the student begins, and as more reading passages are assigned, and the student begins using it more and more, this artificial intelligence will get better and better over time. So it just takes a little bit of patience and working with that.
And so Damien also has had some great use cases there for when we might want to change that pronunciation sensitivity button. If you have really young students who are just getting started in their reading and their fluency, you probably want to have the sensitivity low, right? We know that they'll make more errors. We want to be more forgiving. And so we would have it set to low. Likewise, as Damien was kind of getting at, if you have students who are English language learners, there's that accent piece. We would also want to set the pronunciation to a low sensitivity. But if you have high school, junior high learners, then you can bump that sensitivity up, because we would expect that they are more precise in their abilities. And so really one of the reasons, or one of the ways that we can use that dial is also to, again, differentiate for our learners.
Yeah, great point. Thanks for clearing that up. Cool. So we might have noticed that I was kind of working through this a little bit inefficiently, right? So when I saw hooked or hawked and I wanted to read that part, I slid it back, or I just clicked play to start from the beginning. You don't actually have to do that. Especially if you're in the middle of a passage, the last thing you want to do is re-listen to the first half in order to get there. So what I'm actually able to do is, let's say I wanted to begin marking this new sentence. I can click on the word. I'll still get all those things that I can mark. I can edit it if I so chose, but I can also jump to the word. And so by jumping,
when he catches a fish in his sharp, rough claws, he carries.
So when I click jump to word, I can begin exactly where I left off. So we don't have to worry about starting over, or we took some time to mark or write feedback. We can jump anywhere we want and stay pretty efficient in that sense. So that's super cool. Yeah.
We love that as teachers, because we've all had that, you're on the YouTube and you're trying to find just the right spot, and you're trying, right? We've all done that with videos. And so when I started to use Reading Progress, that was just like the best feature ever. I can go right to a spot and start from there, and I don't have to try to, get the dial on the video feed to go to the right place. So that is just, and I'm like, it's almost like too good to be true kind of feature. So that's something as a teacher I sure appreciate.
Yeah, exactly. And the next part, so again, we mentioned you don't necessarily have to do a rubric, right? It's up to you how you're running the class and everything like that. But what I really like personally is the fact that you can edit and mark this directly within the actual passage. So I currently have Cami opened. I could always cycle through to the next student right from here. So if Al submitted something, I can just go student by student. I don't have to go back into assignments and go back into the next student. I can just stay on this pane, dedicate, or block some processing time for this and do that. What I also love is the rubric, right? I don't have to now have a separate sheet, beside me as I'm checking on two things or open up like a double panel. I can just click the actual title here and it will open up the rubric in this right panel. So now as we're marking, as we're going through this or skimming through and doing a final kind of calculation, I can be like, yo, cool. Okay, so I can mark Cami right from this rubric here. So you know what? I heard Cami pretty good. So I can select good and 3 points right there. I can then click next. We're on the next part of our rubric in clarity. So pronounce all the words correctly? Not really. So we're gonna go ahead and do fair. Fluency. It was pretty good, I think. Expression. I can go ahead and select an expression. So 3. And I can enter feedback on each individual aspect of that rubric as well. So, if I wanted to quickly put something, anything that we want, and I can add that feedback directly into each part. And lastly, I think posture. So in this case, I didn't have a video as mandatory, right? So I would just give like a freebie point right there if I wanted to. And there we go. And so just like that, I was able to assess everything, click done. And then I see now a completed 15 out of 20 for Cami. So once I'm done that, I can then choose to either return back to my student or return for revision. So we can always provide our assignment back to the student to maybe assess, see what they did wrong, and give them another opportunity to resubmit a better passage, which is super, super great. Before I actually click any of these returns, one more thing that I wanted to showcase is the insight level. So because I'm in a fake tenant, essentially, right? It's just a demo mode of it, but it should be already applicable and working within your tenants. But under each student and passage, I can actually get insights for the student themselves. So if I click on insight, I won't see Cami. I'll probably see somebody else here. Yeah, so it's just a demo mode. So I've got Alfred here, right? That's okay. But over time, as we're working with our students and with our classes, we can begin developing insights onto their reading progress, right? So are they improving over time, over a course of some assignments? How is their accuracy rate specifically to different things like the mispronunciations or insertions? So we can see exactly what's happening. I can also again, filter through these different settings and subsections as well. So if I'm looking for a specific thing, I can do that. I'm able to see and assess the student versus the class average, right? So how many words per minute they're speaking, improving or not, and also the accuracy rate of their text as well. And lastly, I really like this. You get the little word cloud. So as we're working through passages and as we're developing the reading comprehension, there will be some words that are a little bit more difficult to stick through, right? They might be a little harder, and we can pick those up. So now we are getting that direct feedback into our students, and we know what we need to specifically tailor for them. So, okay, in this case, conspicuous is a pretty tough word. So I can ensure that, we're spending some extra time on the student in order to work on this work. And I really like this too, because this is great for parent-teacher interviews, right? So if their parent is asking or they don't know, like, how's my student doing over time, you can easily pull this up, remain confidential, right? Because you're not showcasing any other student, and then simply be able to show them, well, this is how great your student has been, or here are some, difficulties or challenges that we saw and what we can do to improve that or encourage that. So I really love the insights. It's and I'll show you where you can also see it on a class level. But yeah, so lastly, we have another way to filter these results as well. So if I'm looking at different reading levels, depending on what we selected in all the assignments we made, the different genres that it shows right now, and within a time period as well. So we can always look, how are we improving over the course of the semester? How are we improving over the course of even just last week or the week prior? So some really great tools for us to be able to encourage and work on our student learning. Okay, and then lastly, which is pretty cool, because note that when we clicked on Cami's turned in again, right, that means that Cami had already actually worked on this assignment before. So I can view the history of that work right over here. So I can see exactly what happened, right? So I signed it on the 10th. Cami was great, viewed it on the 10th. I returned it on the 15th, and then returned for revision, try it again, and Cami resubmitted it on the 22nd. So I have a story that I can also see as well with how great we are working on improvements, and we can tie this in with those insights as well to create something a little bit more congruent. Okay, and lastly, I think I'll just return for revision once more. You know what? Maybe I'll just return it. That's okay.
So Damien, as a teacher, I was so impressed by how good the artificial intelligence was. When Damien played the recording, there were some words that were missed, but overall, it was like, it's so amazing how accurate it is, and that it gets the omissions and the additions and the mispronunciations. So, when I think of using this in my own class, there might be times when I go into this piece and I actually listen to it myself, but there will be other times, maybe every second and third time, when I just let reading progress do the grading, and then I check in occasionally, but the student's still getting feedback. So if you think of the incredible time saver that is, and again, not that we never want to come in and do the manual part. I think that that's important, but for those in between times, students still are getting feedback, which is so important to improvement.
Yeah, and you brought up earlier, Cami, what it's like when you assign a passage too long and you say, "Oh, only read this part." Essentially, what will happen? I was trying to look for an example. I think we deleted it. But what would happen essentially is the rest of the entire text of what was finished will actually be an omission. So each word will be highlighted as this, I don't know, pink. I don't know what color this is, but this pink omission. And we don't want that, right? Because that's going to decrease the accuracy rate. That's going to provide an inaccurate representation of our student. So really just be mindful of what you will be assigning to them. And are we for sure reading the full passage, or do we want to break it up maybe into smaller chunks?
Yeah, the first time I had 8% accuracy because I had only read a section and the rest was marked as incomplete. So I learned a valuable lesson there.
And the last thing I just wanted to showcase, I brought it up literally 5 seconds ago, but the insights for the whole classroom this time is when we go into our class or our team. So in this case, accessibility studies, under that new section where we have class notebook, assignments, grades, I can click on insights here, and this will give me a class view of what is going on. So where we were just looking at insights for students specifically inside reading progress, now we can in general just look at a classroom insight, right? And then it'll give us like a general look of what's happening, right? So I can track in general student activity, what's happening here, if have they been online, how long have they been online, right? Or if they're spending really time on the work, I can see who's communicating the most and actually participating, right? So if we wanted to get participation marks, that's a cool thing that you can look at as well. And lastly, in general, we can look at the assignments as well that is being submitted and the general class average there.
Damien, Sydney has a great question, and I can't remember the answer, so I'm going to see if you can. She's wondering so when the student presses submit, do they automatically see the feedback, like all the statistics and the colors, before the teacher looks at it and sends it back to them? I think not, but I want to make sure that I'm getting that right.
Yeah, I'm quite confident that they don't, because because you as a teacher, you have to still go through that process of marking, right? So AI can do it, but that's on a teacher view, right? So once it's then submitted, they'll see after, right? After it's returned to them, they can see what they got wrong, right? And specifically, but once they submit and it's waiting for submission, I don't think that you can see the
yeah. So if Sydney's teacher mind is working like mine, it's like, okay, the student could almost self-assess, right? Like I got 72% efficiency. I've got 2 more tries left. I can see the mark. I want to look at that. I want to try better. I can see where I made my errors. And then the student could self-assess and do back. I think maybe that's where you're going with that, Sydney. But they would have to turn it in, and then the teacher could turn it back to them. So they'd have to submit so the teacher could take a look at it, see what their first attempt was. The teacher could send it right back for them to improve, but it has to go through the teacher first.
Yeah, but great question. That's a really good call out. Thanks for that. Okay, so with that being said, let's dive right in. Let's wrap up. I'm just gonna quickly go through this deck, and again, all of this is available for all of you. But as promised at the beginning of today's session, for spending the hour of your day with us. You are provided this beautiful code that you can redeem at education.microsoft.com. And if you don't know at all what I'm talking about, essentially, as we call it, the MEC, M-E-C, it is a resource for our educators globally in order to go ahead and check out some of these tools and courses and get badges for the work that you're doing. So we've already provided you the code for today to get that badge. And if you've never visited this before, or if you wanted to quickly take a look at what is happening, then essentially use a personal account so that you can take that anywhere you go. If you're switching jobs or just moving around a lot, create a personal account to track your badge and progress. But a phenomenal way for you to, showcase your PD, ALP course, courses or checklists, and then be able to do that. So once you create an account, you would go ahead and sign in. And then we can take that code from today, click on our account profile in the top right corner, and then redeem the achievement code. And once we have that achievement code, all I do is go ahead and type that in here, click redeem, and boom, it would be part of my profile. So I can also go and see my profile, see all of the different badges I have accumulated. I can go into each individual badge and view the certificate, share it on social media as well. I can also redeem my code right from here, and ultimately view and print a transcript of everything that I've done. So what's really cool is you get, again, the little visual of the badge, if there is one, when it was completed, the description of that badge, and how long it took for you to complete it. So that is just super great way that you can kind of showcase your learning, demonstrate the upskilling that you are doing, and get recognition for that as well. So yeah, with that being said, thank you so much for joining us today. There is a course up there, but I think it covers mostly everything that we did. And we do have in the slide deck that we shared with you, there is a demo guide. So it's actually an interactive guide that Microsoft created, and you kind of click through, similar to what I did, but now you get a bit of a hands-on approach to that. We do have a YouTube. Yep, sorry.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, Damien, I would actually really recommend if you go to sign up for that Microsoft Educator Center, and then there is another reading progress course. It's very similar to this one, but it's a great way to just kind of go through again. If you're a learner like me, I kind of get it the first time, but then I really get it the second time. So that's a great, the link's in the slide, I put it in the chat. A great way to go through and really cement your learning today is just click through, and there's some little quizzes you can test yourself along the way in that Microsoft Education Center.
Yeah, absolutely.
There is also in the chat a link that we would love for you to click on, a Cobblestone feedback link. It's like a 1-minute survey. And so it's cobblestone.ca/feedback. That takes you to just a really quick little form that helps us make sure that we're doing the right things, that we're answering the right features, all the things that would be helpful for you. And so we love it if you just take a minute and fill that out at the end of our time together. If you have questions about anything that we've talked about today, put those in the chat, or we're a fairly small group today, pop your microphone on. We can certainly try to help you figure out what you're wondering.
Yeah, but ultimately, thank you for joining us today. So happy to have all of you.